One of my favorite things about making videos is the look on people's faces when I turn a crappy looking location into a scene from a music video. However, it's not that difficult to make something ugly look gorgeous. Believe me, I'm a drag queen. I do it every week. What I find challenging is making an ordinary, regular, boring location such as my living room look interesting and authentic on camera. And it's more likely that you're gonna have to make such locations look good than something that's really ugly. So today I am gonna show you how I turned this space into this shot. This breakdown is not really meant to be instructional, so it doesn't really matter what equipment I used. What could be useful is understanding the process, the path that I took to get from point A to B, and maybe applying those principles in the future when you have a similar shot to light. So the first thing I'm gonna do is frame my shot, and I know that I am going to be sitting here. I am the subject, and I would like to make sure that I respect the rule of thirds, which means putting my head kind of around there. So now that I have this position taken care of, we can look around at the other things. I do not like this radiator, but we're gonna come back to that later. What I'm gonna do now is take a look at what my exposure is doing. Whenever you have a scene where you can see the outside from the inside, there's usually gonna be a problem with the exposure because the exposure indoors is usually way lower than that outdoors. And if it's daytime, it's really hard to compensate or to find a middle ground. So we're gonna have to find the best middle ground that we can, or actually the least worst middle ground. Now, in this shot, it doesn't take a scientist to tell you that outside is overexposed, but to help me do that more precisely, I can use the false color on my monitor. Anything in the red tells you that it is overexposed, which is outside, and anything in the blues and in the purples means it's quite underexposed, like the shadows. So here is the exposure that I went for. I kind of ended up exposing for the exterior, for the sky, even though I'm not all that interested in getting the details there. I'm interested in making the inside look good. So naturally, my interior is gonna be a little bit on the dark side, and I will take care of that. But one thing that really annoys me right now is all this bit right here. Apart from the fact that, yes, it doesn't look great, you know, that doesn't look great. It's not aesthetic, and I don't like the switch. I just don't like that there is a patch of white and a patch of nothing that is kind of like facing my subject. It's like he's looking at nothing. So I wanna get rid of that. I wanna put something there. I wanna place something not necessarily of interest, but something that will help that wall disappear into the background. So I took some wood panels and placed it right up against those marks on the white wall and made it seem as if that is actually wall paneling. And then I set up my key light, and here we are with the first iteration of this shot. You can see that my face is a little bit warm. That's because I set the key light to tungsten while the camera is on daylight. So the camera's white balance is correct for whatever is outside because it's daylight, but it is wrong for whatever comes in contact with my key light, which is everything coming from here, which is my face. Now, my intention here is that when I set the white balance of the camera to tungsten, which would be correct for my skin tones, everything else is going to shift into a colder region. So my skin tones will go from really warm to normal, and everything else will shift from being normal to having a bluish tint. And this is what that looks like. You can see that my skin tones are normal. How do I know? It's my skin tone, I know. And also if you check it with the vector scope, and outside the sky is a little bit bluer, but then so is everything. The table is a little bit bluer, my shirt has a little bit more of a saturated look, and the wall kind of gets this bluish tint. The shadows are blue, and this is something that I personally want to do with this shot. It's not standard procedure, it's not correct, but we're gonna see how it turns out. Moving on, I felt that we were a little bit too exposed over here, so I took the exposure down a bit. I want it to be a bit more moody. I want to see less of the environment. Of course, there's a white wall here, which I will not be able to avoid, and I'm not even gonna try to fight it. It is what it is. That is the location. But I do like how we have details in the sky, and I have this little sliver of colored light, of blue light, that is outlining me. As you can notice behind me, I did put a plant in the background because it was just too empty, and it also kind of took away attention from the radiator. I didn't even know her. So here we have a darker version of the scene, which I quite like, but something's missing. There is no explanation as to where the warm light on my face is coming from. So basically,
The lighting in this shot is unmotivated.
there is very obviously a key light lighting my face, and it looks artificial. To make it more natural, what we have to do is to motivate the lighting that we have in the scene. In this shot, it's quite simple. We just add a lamp. Now that we've added a lamp to the shot, it's quite logical that the warm light on my face is coming from the warm lamp. So the lighting on my face has been motivated. So now we are kind of there. I like it, but it's still empty, so I'm gonna start putting some props. Anything that makes sense to my story, to whatever it is I want to tell. Now at this point, everything's looking good. I like it, but I decided that I kind of want to enhance the contrast ratio of the shot, which means I like how bright the brights are, but I would like the darks to be even darker so that I get more of a crushed look, more of a moody vibe. And the only way to do this is to stop the light that is coming from here
From being bounced all through the room and reflecting back on my face.
which means that I would have to put a negative fill on this side of the shot. Negative fill does exactly what it sounds like. It fills the image with nothing. And by nothing, I mean no light. So it's basically the opposite of a bounce or a fill. So here you have the shot before negative fill, and here you have the shot with negative fill. It's a little bit moodier. There's much less happening on this side. At this point, I decided that I didn't like the whole left side of the image. It was kind of boring. So I decided to play around with an LED panel, and I set it up highlighting the background, which kind of gives me a halo from behind, a glow from behind, which would kind of help separate me from the background. But then it felt a little bit too music video-y. It didn't really feel that authentic because where would that light be coming from? So instead, I set up the light as a regular contour. And here you can see how the whole right side of the image, it has a little bit of a sliver of light, and it's not very powerful, so you're not tempted to ask, where is that coming from? It's just a little teeny thing there. It could be another window, or it could be another lamp. After that, I felt that my white balance had kind of drifted. I don't know what I did, but I corrected it and set it to the correct level of tungsten, and my skin tone snapped back to normal. And here it is. I'm basically ready to shoot. This is it. This is the shot. It does feel a little bit too bright, but I'm gonna correct everything with my color checker, which contains all the information that I need to snap everything back into its correct values. By everything I mean the white balance and all the colors.
I have a whole video about color checkers and how they work. Check it out, it's somewhere on my channel. So here's the final image before color grading, and here it is with color grading. I got this grainy and cinematic look using Dehancer. It's a film emulation plugin. Check out the next video to see the full color grading process. The fun part of learning is when you're able to apply a lesson from one part of life to a totally different one. Coco Chanel said, "Before you leave the house, look in the mirror and remove one accessory." So before I hit record, I look at the shot and turn each light on and off to see what it does. And I usually end up using less than I started out with. In this case, I got rid of the LED panel on the left and turned the key light down really low. And sure, if I had a clearer idea of what I wanted from the beginning, I would have gone straight for this look, but where's the fun in that? Now, if you look carefully, you're gonna see a subtle change. What you're looking at now is 100% generated by AI, which is really cool, but also I need to figure out what I'm doing with my life because this is how I make a living.